Look, Diana even gave you the red heart because she likes them too.
I'm so
Yay.
right. All right, everybody, welcome to the AI and ethics lecture. So this is going to be a workshop which is not so much about like the technical aspects of AI. We've already had kind of that intro to AI workshop. This is going to be more about the applications of AI and how they're used in society. So don't worry if you don't understand like how a project works in these presentations. It's kind of you have to understand the impacts, and that's the most important part of this. So artificial intelligence and AI. So artificial intelligence is a revolutionary type of coding. It's pretty new, although it has been talked about like throughout the history of computer science. And the main thing about artificial intelligence is that it's very good with predicting and finding patterns that normal humans and computers cannot. It has an impact in a lot of fields, whether it be medicine, travel, music. It's always on the news. Like I'm sure you guys have heard of like a new algorithm for this. Like even right now, I've seen a lot of papers which are using AI to research COVID, to figure out optimal vaccine distribution strategies. And here are some of the examples of things that use AI. So on the left, we have Pandora and Spotify will use AI to figure out what's the next music they should play for you. In the middle, we have this is a pretty odd picture, but this is from a self-driving car's camera, and that kind of uses data from the camera to figure out how to drive the car like a human would. And then we have IBM Watson, which is used to predict cancer and diagnose cancer and do a lot of other medical work, but it's all AI and not an actual doctor. So AI is like a part of us. It's going to take the world by storm and we need to control it. Just like computers became a part of every single industry, AI is probably going to be a significant part of every industry considering how versatile it is. That means that we need to take the same precautions and the same regulations that we do with computer science as in AI. So computers and law. The internet has been a part of society and has many laws. There are laws against fraud, illegal commerce, and etc. are all monitored and banned. Companies will encrypt user data to protect from hackers. Moderators on platforms contribute to a safe environment. Even here, we have to protect against Zoom bombers through like passwords and like checking names and stuff like that. And as AI becomes as popular as the internet, similar measures must be considered. So here are the main concerns about AI that have been kind of put in recent news and generally people talk about. So the first thing is data. Is the data that is being used to train AIs and artificial intelligence algorithms ethical and safe? Then there's the applications. Is AI being used for morally acceptable purposes? And finally, international usage. How are other countries treating AI differently from us? Because in the US, we might think of AI and privacy and all the things in a very different way from other countries, like perhaps China, which will be covered later. So these concerns must be addressed to make sure that AI progresses in a safe and legal way. So the first thing we're going to cover is data usage in AI, which is training AIs to do the right thing. So data in AI. AIs generally require a lot of data, or at least a significant amount of data, to be trained accurately. Basically, what AIs do is they take a lot of data, whether it be medical data, picture data, it doesn't matter depending on the project. And they look through it and they find patterns and like anomalies and whatever in it. And then they create a model to predict the next set. Like, for example, if you get a bunch of data about like people with cancer and then people without cancer, and then along with that data for each person you get like their blood type and like I don't know other health levels, symptoms, etc. Then like an AI will take that data and they'll see, okay, so all of the patients with cancer have like these values for certain parameters, and then all the people without cancer don't necessarily have these, and then it'll be able to take a new data point of like a person's medical history and it'll say, okay, judging based on all the previous data I've seen, I think this person is cancer, or I don't think this person is cancer. So especially data sets with human info, they need to be monitored extensively because human info is a very important thing. Privacy is a long-standing right in the US and in almost all governments, and it needs to be protected. And when it comes to like giving your information for research, there's a lot of like precautions to make sure that like your identity isn't revealed and things like that. Data sets also need to be inclusive and ethically sourced. For example, patient data must be de-identified. So there should be no identifying features about names or people in the patient data. And it needs to be inclusive in that many different people are represented. They need to like show up people of all races, genders, abilities, etc. Otherwise, it won't be an accurate representation of the people of the world. And these concerns must be addressed to make sure that AI progresses in a safe and legal way. So here is a small case study of like why data is an important thing to look at when it comes to AI and ethics. So this is what happened. Google had a algorithm which was supposed to recognize people's faces or recognize objects. And when it was taken to white people's faces, it generally gave like good results, like it showed like man, woman, etc. But when they were shown people of color's faces, they were considered as gorillas. And this seems like a very like obviously this is wrong. Like you will clearly be able to look at a person and you'll be able to say that that's not a gorilla. Like that's not a mistake people would make. The reason that they made this mistake was that there simply weren't enough people of color's faces in the data set. Like the algorithm saw a bunch of pictures of usually white males and they were able to recognize it because that is almost all they had been trained on. But they didn't necessarily see as many women's faces or people of color's faces. And so when they were met with another person of color's face, they couldn't identify it with nearly as much accuracy as the white people's faces. And like this seems like a kind of like trivial thing, like, oh, it's like they just said something kind of bad, but it has a lot of impacts beyond just classifying someone as a gorilla. If racism leaks into AI, there's like a lot of representation crisis that will also get influenced in AI. Like, for example, if this was used to identify people trapped in debris, like imagine if you had a drone and there was a camera and it was looking at like a scene of like a fire or an earthquake and it was trying to find people. If it was only able to recognize people who are white, then like people of color would just not be recognized. And then what happens if somebody loses their life because an algorithm couldn't recognize that they were human? Like those kind of concerns like seem like they're hyperbolical, but they definitely have to be taken into account. Okay, next we have applications of AI. So this is using AIs to do the right thing. So AI is very versatile. It can be used anywhere where there's enough data, but if AI is not created properly, it can profile people and discriminate. And these concerns must be addressed to make sure that AI progresses in a safe and legal way. I always repeat this statement because it's like an important thing to know, that the reason that we're talking about this is because safe and legality is a very important thing when it comes to such impactful technologies. Yeah, so especially like this kind of comes with all technologies. What are you using it for? Like the same technology that can be used to like save lives can also be used to kill people, and that's always something you have to remember. So here is a case study for Amazon hiring algorithms of 2014. So this is what happened. Amazon put an AI algorithm to hire coders, and it ended up excluding anyone who attended a women's college or a women's organization. And this is important because of the stereotype that there are less women in tech was kind of given to the algorithm as if it was fact. Because an algorithm given data doesn't know of like stereotypes, it doesn't know of like historical oppression, it doesn't know about like that psychological stuff. It just knows that, okay, seeing all of this data, there aren't as many women, and it assumes that maybe that's just fact, like maybe I should prioritize men, and that's clearly not. That's kind of something we want to fight against, actually. So even if like people believe that, yeah, AI is a computer, it won't carry any biases and that's why we should use it instead of humans, sometimes it can have the implicit biases of humans and even amplify them. So AI being used to profile people and making generalizations is generally something that is very, very bad and can be used in like pretty nefarious purposes. For example, what would happen if these kind of algorithms were used for like criminal profiling? They would make the assumptions that like certain types of people are more likely to commit crimes, and then it would be biased towards them, and that would be a whole lot of issues that we don't want to have in our criminal profiling system, or criminal justice system, I'm sorry. And then finally, we have international usage of AI. So this is how AI is treated around the world. AI has been used in America, obviously, like there's a lot of study with it here, but in other countries, there's also an equal amount of study because other countries research with American countries, their own scientists, and there's a lot of like international collaboration. And that means that AI is also going to be used internationally, just like the internet is used internationally. That's a lot of inters. Anyways, so America is a very strong believer in privacy and minimal government of interference. That's generally how like American politics works. That's kind of our values. While other countries are a little bit more accepting of government surveillance for their own reasons. So AI is used in a way that is different to America, and that brings a lot of questions. So other countries' AI usages need to be analyzed, and America needs to adapt accordingly, whether it be accepting them or making sure that they're aware of how they use data. So we'll do another case study for Chinese facial recognition. So what happened was in Shanghai, there was a company that developed an algorithm to recognize almost any citizen of China's face. China had a database of every citizen's face. And why is this important is because it is incredibly different from American uses of AI, which is almost entirely non-governmental. And if there is AI used by the government, it's usually very covert and not open. And it kind of shows how the concept of privacy is a little bit of a gray area internationally. Like, if you had asked perhaps a Chinese citizen about this, most of them, or like a common citizen, most likely would not have an insane amount of problems with being under surveillance. But if you had asked a common American citizen about being under surveillance and like, oh, what would happen if the government had a database with your face in it and was able to track you across the country, then a lot of people would most likely say no. They would say it was like an affront to American values. And that's an important thing to recognize, that because of like, whether it be because of societal things, historical things, or just simply how people are in different places, AI can be used differently and viewed differently as well. So, what can we do? Because we've been talking about a lot of case studies and things that we see like that are very above us at companies like Google and governments. And like we're just high schoolers who don't exactly have that much influence yet. The keyword is yet. As prospective members of the STEM industry, we have a duty and obligation to make sure that we are also advocating for a future where AI is used safely, ethically, legally, and with diverseness. We need to make AI and CS a much more inclusive space to eliminate the propagation of racism and sexism in the STEM industry. And this is already happening. Like beforehand, there used to be like a severe difference in how many women versus men were in STEM majors. Even between races, there was still disparities. But now I know there's a lot of engineering colleges which can say they have a 50-50 ratio. I don't remember which ones. I feel like Carnegie Mellon might be one of them, but I'm not sure. And we need to call for legislation about privacy online and make laws in respect to AI. Like we already have a lot of laws in respect to the internet, but it's also important to realize that as AI gets stronger and better, we also need to make laws about that. We also need to work internationally to have global standards for this global technology. Just like there are certain laws about the internet that can't be violated across country borders, there should be laws about AI which can't be violated across country borders. As high schoolers, we can contribute by spreading awareness, being aware of the state of AI in use, and most importantly, asking questions. That's the most important thing, that like you ask questions about the things you do your research, you see these kind of things, and you don't accept whatever is already being done as like, yes, that is just what we have to do. Because if you see some of the algorithms and some of the data sets that are already used, then like you can see it. There's a lot of historical baggage associated with it. And we, as the new incoming generation of STEM workers, are the people who are going to fix that. And we are the ones who are going to make STEM, AI, CS, everything a better place. That's our job. Thank you for listening. Does anybody have any questions about AI and ethics? Does anybody want to discuss something? Like just talk about it? I am done with my slides, but I was hoping if we could have like a little bit more discussion about this because it is kind of a lofty topic.
I wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, sure.
So I know that a common issue in a lot of the cases is not having a diverse enough data set.
Mm.
So would that be part of our what we should advocate for data sets that represent a larger diversity of applicants? Well, not just applicants, for like any purpose of any data set.
Absolutely. That is definitely something that should be advocated for, that I think is a very important thing to advocate for, that data sets, especially, I think though this is one of the most important things, medical data sets. Those are the ones that I believe should be the most advocated for, because like, especially there's a lot of like between races and ethnicities and even gender, there are different things. Like, for example, I think that if you are an Ashkenazi Jew, you have more likely to get Tay-Sachs disease, and like other races and other genders will have different kind of biological things that need to be remembered. And like if you had a data set that you only trained on like white males of a certain age, then like what happens to everybody else? They just simply get lost, and that is something we really want to avoid when it comes to medicine, especially. Yeah, definitely. Think that like, especially for like, data sets are getting better, to be honest. Like I have seen that people, because this is such an issue now, like data sets are becoming better. And I think like a lot of official data sets, I think you can see that like clearly they are improving, but you can always check yourself. Like you can see like, okay, like what is the spread of this data set? Like, is it really skewed to one side and things like that? And you're also totally free to like ask someone, like maybe you reach out to like a professor or a lab for their data. You can ask them like, oh, how did you get these samples? Who did you kind of talk to? Like, did you make sure that you kind of took into account diversity? And they seem like kind of precocious questions, like, oh, you shouldn't be asking that. But I think it's okay to ask. And I think that people will genuinely appreciate it. And if they don't, they will learn to, because that's an important issue to know about. Okay, does anybody else have any questions or anything? Feel like, okay, I'm actually going to, I guess, is there something in the chat? No. I am going to stop this workshop, I guess, early, so that you guys can have some time to work more on your hacks, and make sure that this one is mandatory. Make sure that you come back to the main room at 6 p.m. for the Women in Tech panel. This is where you'll be meeting women who are actually in the STEM industry, and they will have a lot of nice insights to say. And I think that that's very valuable for everyone here. So I'm going to conclude this for now. If you have any questions about this or anything really, you can always reach out to me in the hackathon, and you can even reach out to me after. I love hearing from people. So yeah, thank you all for attending, and happy hacking. Bye.
Very good workshop. Thank you. You like sped by so fast. Like, and I got so much. I like wrote notes.
Oh, that's nice. If you guys need me to share the slides, or if you need me to go back to another slide for notes, then I can do that. So if you
if you could, one of the international AI slides.
Yeah. I know I talk very fast, so like that's something that like, is it the case study or the one before that?
The one before it, please.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, I was like always, I kind of like want to do law and tech. That is definitely a thing. If anybody is interested in that, like you can definitely do law and tech. Like I'm gonna give you guys a name in the chat to search up, Michelle K. Lee. She's like, I met her. Let me figure out her job title. It's really important. She works in the government, and I kind of forgot what she does though. Oops. Yeah. So she's like, she went to like MIT and Stanford Law School, and she used to be like the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property. So she was really into like worked with patents and the Patent and Trademark Office, and she works for Amazon, and like she definitely did a lot of advocating for like AI and like doing stuff like that. And so she was actually a speaker when I went to AI for All. She was our keynote speaker at our last presentation. I have a picture with her, so it's pretty epic. But yeah, if you are interested in doing tech and law, like she's definitely someone whose path you guys can follow and model yourselves after. Haha, get it? AI modeling. I'm so funny. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi.
Thank you so much
Hi,
for
yes.
attending.
I have a question. It's not about the presentation,
Yeah,
although
sure.
it would also, although your presentation was epic. Yes. So I was looking at the submission that for so that I can get an idea of what to do. Do we also have to submit our code or just a demo?
I think the code, like submitting it is a good idea because I think it's like it's good to submit your code so that we can also see the technical difficulty of it. But like if the code file is too big and it's giving you lots of trouble to submit it to dev post, don't worry about it and just submit the demo. But if it's not and you're able to do it, then submit it. It will be looked at.
Okay, thank you.
But also, if you're not able to make your app fully functional, that's totally fine as well. Like a design would work as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, Sheeta, you're still recording. I'm not sure if that's intentional.
Okay, I feel like if I don't have any other questions to take about the AI and ethics stuff, then I'll stop recording.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions about AI and ethics? Okay, I think not. So thank you for attending, everybody, and make sure you guys get yourselves to the Women in Tech workshop at 6. Bye, everyone.